everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about classic literature. Why? Because I thought it would be fun and I was inspired by two of my birthday presents. I actually do own a copy of Jane Eyre, but it was my dad's copy that I sort of inherited. It's cute and pretty and I do like it, but I don't know, it just didn't feel like it was my copy. What do you do when you get a gift card? You purchase a copy of a book you've been looking at for years. Every time I see these in bookshops, I'm obsessed with these editions. So I did it. I have been re-watching all of my old favorite period dramas with my mom. I re-watched Jane Eyre and I was like, how have I never read Jane Eyre? So I picked this up, but then I also I picked up The Count of Monte Cristo, and again, I re-watched the 2002 Count of Monte Cristo, which is one of my family's favorite movies. And I was like, this is such a good story. Like, I love the movie. It's incredible. But the reason that movie is so good is because the story is so good. And I was like, I need to read that. How do I not own it? So I bought it. But like, the thing about this book is it's just so big. Anyways, inspired by these two, we're going to be answering some questions from the Classics book tag. I have so many books here to talk to you about. I actually just redid my Classics in rainbow order, and you can see how they're all flopping over because I emptied them. I brought so many books out, but here's a clip of how beautiful they look in rainbow order. Delicious. The first question is an overhyped classic you didn't really like. A juicy question to start with, and you're gonna have to stick around to hear the answer, because let's start with a word from our sponsor. Today's video is brought to us by Book of the Month. Book of the Month is an online book service for readers. Their mission is to promote new, popular, and emerging authors and help readers discover books they love. How it works is simple. Their team vets hundreds of books every month, and they pick out 5 really interesting titles for you to pick from. If you are subscribed to the service, you get to pick one of those books that is sent to you every month. If for some reason you don't like the book selection that month or you just want to skip it, you can. They have a skip policy. That means you can skip as many times as you want at no charge. They also have additional add-on books from their backlist and new release titles that you can pick from. Just get more books. If you're looking for autumnal books, they currently have The Book of Magic by Alice Hoffman and The X-Hex by Aaron Sterling available. But also The Lincoln Highway by Amor Towles, Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead, The Perishing by Natasha Dion, Everything We Didn't Say by Nicole Bart, and Apples Never Fall by Leanne Moriarty. If you use my code and link down below, you can get your first hardcover for $9.99. So check it out down below, and thanks to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. Okay, are you on the edge of your seats? What is an overhyped classic I didn't really like? Scandalous. The Chrysalids by John Wyndham. So there's a small tale here. I read this book when I was in high school, in grade 9. I was 13. And I think the reason I hate this book is because I hated that class. I really disliked that teacher. I thought she was really mean and just really unpleasant. I hated the syllabus, but I also, it was a rowdy class. It was not a very pleasant room. And infamously, she made us listen to 12th Night on cassette tape. The year was 2009. There was no need for cassette tapes with 13 and 14-year-olds. It was a disaster from the beginning. But I think because of that setting, this book got ruined for me. Because on paper, as now a 27-year-old, so more than 10 years later, objectively, I feel like I would really enjoy this book. I love classic dystopians. I want to give it another shot. My journey with the Chrysalids is not over. I think it might actually be great. I think it might be a me problem. The second question is a favorite time period to read about. I like reading everything. I know that, like, if I had to pick one genre that I could read for the rest of my life, I would pick literary fiction, contemporary fiction, because I enjoy reading about characters in the real world. But in this tag, when we're talking about classics, I like all sorts of classics. If I had to pick one, because this question is asking, near future dystopians. I really love a near future dystopian. Question number 3, my favorite fairy tale. I'm not a big fairy tale person. In my brain, when I think about fairy tales, I associate it with happy memories, but I associate it with my mom reading me fairy tales, like reading me and my brother fairy tales at night before we went to bed and stuff. I don't really affiliate it with reading as an adult. I do want to do one big caveat, and this maybe doesn't count because it's not a book, but I don't care. The best vehicle for fairy tales and folk tales, more aptly, more specifically, ever in humans, that humans have made, is The Storyteller, starring John Hurt, okay? This is a show that my dad showed me and my brother when we were like kids, and to this day, I can watch those folktale, fairy tale stories anytime. They're 20-minute episodes. They share folktales from around the world. You have to watch it. I think they're all on YouTube now because it's such an old show. What is the most embarrassing classic you haven't read yet? Something you're a little ashamed you haven't read yet. I'm not ashamed. I'll get to it eventually. But it does feel like a big gap that I haven't read any Dickens. Any Dickens. Isn't that crazy? I don't know how you get through a master's degree in English literature without reading. Well, he was on the syllabus. The 2 that I own are A Tale of Two Cities, partly because I was completely obsessed with this edition, but also because the first line, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, and then it goes on, is so epic that I really wanted to read the book that came after that first line. And then I own A Christmas Carol because it's such an icon. Again, the Muppets? Maybe I only like stories if Jim Henson produces them. But the Muppets Christmas Carol, iconic. And the story, iconic. And I thought, I really love these Puffin editions. So I figured I'd read this someday, but I still haven't. And it's so short. The next question. Top 5 classics you would like to read soon. Okay, this is a big one. This is interesting. A time for a little TBR, ladies and gentlemen. So, I was looking at it, and I actually have read 3 classics this year. Because when I read this question, I was like, oh, this is, again, so embarrassing. I haven't read any classics in like the last 2 years. It's not true. I have. This year I read 3. I've read Emma by Jane Austen, 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and Anne of Green Gables by Ellen Montgomery. I didn't like 100 Years of Solitude very much, but I really loved the other 2. So I was happy to see that. Thought I'd give you a little update. I'm not a poser. But so when I was looking at my shelves, there was a couple that instantly jumped out at me, and I thought I would put them on this list. So up first is The Blue Castle by Ellen Montgomery. I talked about this in another video recently-ish. I'm really enjoying Ellen Montgomery. I want to keep reading more of her stuff, and I'm just enjoying her characters. And this is a cool character because the character is like 29, right? Yeah, 29. So it's interesting to read one of her stories that isn't about a kid. Obviously, the rest of the Anne series also isn't about Anne as a kid. It's about her as an adult. So that would be cool to read this year, or not this year. There's like a month left. I know it's only October, but it feels like this year's over somehow. Okay, Helen Keller, The Story of My Life. This was a autobiography I picked up. I read her entire Wikipedia article, and I was like, this woman lived an incredible life. And I remember watching The Miracle Worker when I was a kid and being like, whoa, this is so cool. Read it from her own words. I'd like to do. And then finally I have some Orwell. So if you've been around on this channel for any period of time, you'll know that I love George Orwell. Animal Farm is my favorite book of all time. George Orwell is my favorite author of all time. But I've very slowly been reading his work because I don't want to run out. I know that he has a finite amount of work, and so I'm slowly getting through it throughout my life. I'm in no rush, but it's time to read a new one. I haven't read a new book by him in a long time. So I really want to pick up Down and Out in London in Paris. In Paris and London. I always say those backwards. So these two I'm really excited about because I really want to try reading more nonfiction from the past. Usually when I think about classics, I think about like famous novels, but I really like the idea of reading more nonfiction from the past. So Down and Out in Paris and London is definitely, in my opinion, from what I've gathered, his most popular, famous nonfiction work. So I'd love to read this one in these awesome Obey covers. Shepherd Fairy did these editions, and I love them. And then the other one is this graphic novel I found when I was at a bookshop, Strange Adventures Comics in Halifax. I saw this, and I was astounded because I had never heard of this. I didn't know that this had been published. I didn't know it existed. Adapted and illustrated by Fido Nesti, it says, who I think is Brazilian. This looks phenomenal. It looks scary, but like, it's always gonna be scary. I don't know if I've told this story before in a video, but for my birthday quite a few years ago, I was living in London and I went and saw 1984 as a stage production, and I was so excited because it's always exciting to go to the theater, and it was my birthday and it was an Orwell production, and I was like, oh, this is just beautiful, what a wonderful day. Literally, on our walk to the theater, from the tube to the theater, I had an epiphany. I realized it was going to be a really horrible play, like not as in a bad production, but just as in an extremely stressful situation, because the story is horrible. Like 1984 it's fun to read in that it's engaging and compelling and interesting, but it's really heartbreaking. It's devastating, and it's also like quite violent at points and scary at points, and I was like, this is not going to be an enjoyable night of theater. And it was not. It was horrifying. They did such a good job with the production, and in order to do a good job of a 1984 production, it's got to be dark, and it was really dark. But anyways, excited to read this one. So those are some of the books I really want to read coming up in the next year or so. Let's go on to the next question. Favorite movie version / TV series based on a classic? Huge question, because I love period dramas. I was raised on period dramas. My dad loved Star Trek and Jane Austen, and I grew up watching them with my dad and my mom, and just this family loves period dramas. So they feel so nostalgic to me as well. But my favorite has always been the Jane Eyre with Ruth Wilson and Toby Stephens. To me, it's unparalleled. It's just so beautiful. The chemistry between the two characters feels really good. The acting, the representation of those characters, she feels like Jane Eyre to me. She is meek and she is mild, but she's also confident and brave. And Mr. Rochester is funny, but he's also severe, and there's clearly something wrong with him. So I just really love that adaptation. However, when I was looking up like adaptations to make sure I didn't miss a really important one, I saw a couple other ones mentioned that I was like, I guess that is an adaptation of a classic. Lord of the Rings? I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and how are those not classics, right? So I thought I should shout that out. A Knight's Tale is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's me and my brother's favorite movie. We watch it over and over and over and over again. And it's sort of a version of the Canterbury Tales. So I was like, I guess that counts. But then the two that I watch the most are the new 2020 Emma, which that came into my life and made a big splash, and the 2005 Pride and Prejudice. Keira Knightley is my favorite actress. So she, in my opinion, was it's perfect. It's perfect. For a movie, it's perfect. Anya Taylor-Joy is like my new favorite actress of the modern era. God, do you think Anya and Kira could do a movie together? Wow. Worst classic movie adaptation, it asks me here. I would say the new Jane Eyre. And it's not even new anymore. It's like from 2011 or something. It didn't feel like it did anything particularly bold or interesting or innovative. It was not really a new take on the story. I felt like the characters were all really bland. Judi Dench is the best thing in that movie. But otherwise, it feels so dry. And it's like a good adaptation in the way that like it goes through the story. It doesn't like take creative liberties and mess up the story or anything. It's a faithful adaptation. But I just feel like it's quite a boring adaptation. And I remember watching it in 2011 when it came out and not liking it. Never watched it again until a week ago. I rewatched it because I'm rewatching everything right now. And I was like, yeah, no, this is dry. It's dry like toast, as my mom would say. Okay, the next question. Favorite editions you'd like to collect more classics from? I love this question because this is one of the most fun things as a book collector about classic books. The fact that we get these beautiful editions because the books are in the public domain or because the publisher of that specific book like wants to reinvigorate the title. So I have quite a few to show you. Show and tell time. The first one is this one. We have the these Charles Dickens, I guess it's vintage classics editions. They're phenomenal. I love this giant text. I think these are so good. So I definitely, if I read this one and like it, or if I want to read another Dickens, I will get them in these editions. Like I also showed you, I really like these Puffin English ones. This one isn't even the Puffin Chalk ones. That's not even the best one. This Peter Pan is so pretty. This is what got me on the Puffin Chalk editions. That's beautiful. That is just beautiful. Actually, these are what inspired the logo for my podcast. That's a fun fact. Then I wanted to mention these editions, which I also showed to you guys because I think these are beautiful and there are more of them. And okay, fine, I'll buy them all. And then I did have to mention again these ones. So the English Library hardcover ones. I own these other two, which were given to me at a Penguin Christmas party many years ago in London when I used to go to publishing events. The Day of the Triffids and Naked Lunch. So now I own 3 of these. And these colors actually are really cool. They look cool on camera, yeah. They look really cool together. Wow, I love that. But these are really expensive, so I never buy these. Like this was $40. Yikes. But now on to some new material that you haven't seen in this video yet. I was sent these. These are from Pan Macmillan. What do they call these again? The Macmillan Collector's Library. They're very little. Like they're very mini. If I put this up to one of these, which is like a very standard sized book, you can see how little these books are. But they have these really pretty spines. And then, I mean, gosh, the end pages are really pretty. But under, they have these beautiful embossed hardcovers that are just really beautiful. And then we got the gold foiled edges. I mean, I have recently discovered these guys, Modern Library. Everyone's calling themselves the Modern Library. Hard to distinguish. Modern Library torch bearers. Bearers. That's a tough word. I own 3 of these now. The first one was Passing, which they're now making a movie for. But Passing. And then I got these other 2 recently. I think these are really pretty editions. And they seem to like be republishing. Yeah, the Modern Library Torchbearers series features women who wrote on their own terms, etc., etc. So, classic women. Okay, here's a debate. Shakespeare. There's a million different versions of Shakespeare, but these are 2 of my favorites. These are so beautifully done, but also really affordable. Like this is $10.99. So I love that these were really thoughtfully made. I have more of these, but I just thought I'd show you my favorite one. Richard III. I love the cover on this one. But then we also have this one, and I love these. It's like a neon sign. Usually I think I don't like it when stuff looks super modern, but this still looks medieval, just with a weirdly modern edge. I love these. This is even cheaper. This is only $9.50 in Canada. And then the last one I wanted to show you guys, these Russian classics that Vintage does. Astonishing. So this is Crime and Punishment. But I know they do a bunch of, oh yeah, it shows me here on the back all of the other ones that they do. So if I were to get like Anna Karenina or, I don't know, War and Peace, I would definitely get them in these copies because I think they're so tastefully, beautifully done. They look epic. They feel really luxurious, but they're also really floppy. And they have really good font size, so it's also comfortable to read. Damn. Well, there you have it. Those are a bunch of classics. I've really made a mess here. But I thank you all for hanging out with me. I'd love to hear in the comments, what is the last classic you read and did you enjoy it? Do you tend to read them very much? On my podcast, we talk about chipmunk books. They're like books you're sort of squirreling away a little bit. You get them and you collect them and you gather them, but you're not in a rush to read them necessarily. You know you want to read them, but they can just be there for a while. Classics feel that way because they're always relevant. So there's no rush to get to them. But that doesn't mean I don't want to get to them. And if I don't read them consistently over time, I will never read them all. Or all the ones I care to read. So I'm glad I've read a few this year and I'm excited to read some more next year. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring. If you want to check them out, they're linked down below. And I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.